On Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
We turn now to the U.S. drone war in Yemen. On Tuesday, the U.S. Senate held its first ever historic public hearing on President Obama's secret drone and targeted killing program. The most moving testimony came from Farea alMuslimi, a U.S. educated youth activist from Yemen who offered a rare first-hand account of the suffering that drone warfare wreaks on ordinary people's lives. His family's village of Wasab was hit by a U.S. drone strike last week.
What Wasab's villagers knew of the U.S. was based on my stories about my wonderful experiences here. The friendships and values I experienced and described to the villagers helped them understand the America that I know and that I love. Now, however, when they think of America, they think of the terror they feel from the drones that hover over their heads, ready to fire missiles at any time. What a violent militants had previously failed to achieve, one drone strike accomplished in an instant. There is now an intense anger against America in Wasab. This is not an isolated instance. The drone strikes are the face of America to many Yemenis. I have spoken to many victims of U.S. drone strikes, like a mother in Jar who had to identify her innocent 18-year-old son's body through a video in a stranger's cell phone. Or the father in Shakra who held his 4- and 6-year-old children as they died in his arms. Recently in Aden, I spoke with one of the tribal leaders present in 2009 at the place where the U.S. cruise missiles targeted the village of Al-Ma'jala in Lawdar, Abian. More than 40 civilians were killed, including 4 pregnant women. The tribal leader and others tried to rescue the victims, but the bodies were so decimated that it was impossible to differentiate between those of children, women, and their animals. Some of these innocent people were buried in the same grave as their animals.
Farea alMuslimi, the strike on his family's village marked a resumption of U.S. drone attacks in Yemen after several months of quiet. Video of his testimony has gone viral. For more, we're joined by Farea alMuslimi himself in studio in Washington, D.C. He is a youth activist, he is a freelance journalist, and he went to school here in the United States for a year. Farea, welcome to Democracy Now! How many people died in your family's village last week in this drone strike?
Good morning. How many people died, you mean?
Yes. Do you know?
I know of 5 people, but the issue of that is more than numbers. What it has brought, I think, on the long strategic term is more than just how many people died or how many people were civilians or were not civilians. There is other cases in Yemen where, for example, in an area like Al-Ma'jala in Abian, 46 people were killed in a U.S. cruise missiles strike. And 4 of these were pregnant women. These innocent civilians, for example, in 2009, they were all, there was no militants around that village when it was killed, when it was targeted. And that has, some of these bodies of these innocent people were actually buried in the same grave with their animals, as they were so decimated that it was impossible to separate their bodies. The issue of this is more than numbers, in the sense that it's raging people, it's making a lot of people angry, and it's becoming America's main and only face in Yemen, very unfortunately.
And Farea, could you tell us what you know of what the U.S. government is saying was the target of this attack? Did you know the person? And was there any other way, if the United States government wanted to apprehend the target of this attack, that they could have done it without a drone strike?
I don't know exactly why was this person is a target, and what is the basis on this attack, and what was the methodology of the process, and I'm not familiar with that. All I'm familiar with is I knew who is the man. I never met him though, but I knew that it was 100%, and I can confidently say that it was easier to capture him than to capture any regular gang member in New York City. And that would have been, even security-wise, much better and more strategic, in the sense that now we killed this man, and there was other people who didn't know he was wanted, and they were killed with him. But in the sense that you killed this man, and a lot of information actually went with him. But and that is security-wise a lot of lose, in the sense that if you captured him, you could have actually investigated with him and made and knew what is happening and who's behind him and probably who's with him in the village. Right now, you killed him, and probably if he has already made another cells, they can one day move again. But more than that is you have raised thousands of poor farmers whom were very easily could have handed this man to you themselves if you asked them, if you told them that this man was a target. But instead, a lot of people now are angry.
Farea, you testified yesterday, unlike the Obama administration, who refused to send someone. And let's remember, the Senate is from the same party. The Senate committee is run by the same party. Dick Durbin, the head of this committee. The Obama administration refused to send a representative to explain the drone attacks in this first ever hearing. But you described coming to school here in the United States. Describe that experience for us now, your feelings about the United States, the family you stayed with, and when you returned, the stories you told in your family's village.
I mean, I continue to think that was the epic year of my life, the very best year. I can't think of, so far at least, another year that has been more rich and more diverse and more rewarding, in the sense that I was supposed to never probably leave my village. And actually I was awarded that scholarship, studied English, and I came to the US. And it was an eye-opening, I think, in every sense. And it was, I tend to think of it as much as equal as to the power of studying English, and especially when your school does not teach you that. You don't anymore read or write from right to left only, but you also look to the world from your eyes, from also left to right. And that, I think, makes me a person in the middle of between the two places, or if I may say, the bridge that connects the two places. And therefore, when such unfortunate incidents like terrifying a farmer or very sad story like what happened also in Boston, I equally get the misery feeling of both incidents, and to be, I think, put in a unique position is something that, while it's rich and it's rewarding, it's also a lot of obligation to connect what you might call the unconnected.
Democracy Now! This week, we spoke to journalist Jeremy Scahill, whose new book has just come out this week. It's called Dirty Wars, The World is a Battlefield. He spoke about U.S. counterterrorism policy in Yemen.
The United States doesn't have any actual intelligence on the ground in Yemen. They've taken to doing these signature strikes where they develop a pattern of life, and they say if people are in a certain region of Yemen or Pakistan or Somalia, if people are in a certain region and they're of military age, they could be anywhere from 15 to 70 years old, and they fit some kind of a pattern of other people we believe to be terrorists, then they become legitimate targets. So it's the most horrific form of pre-crime. They don't know the identities of the people that they're killing. They don't know whether they've been involved with any activity. They're killed for who they might be or they might one day become.
Farea alMuslimi, can you respond to Jeremy's description and the response in Yemen to these drone strikes in your family's village and other places?
I mean, as always, Jeremy is an excellent, one of the very rare people. When you look to Yemen in D.C. and in the United States, it's not a place that is not understood. It's highly misunderstood. And one of the rare people who really understand Yemen, I think, is Jeremy, and what he described is absolutely true. But in the sense, if I want to push it to more than that, I would say, one, it helps actually AQAP in the sense it distracts people from being afraid of AQAP, and rather than that, afraid from the air. And in addition to that, if someone, like the former target in my village, people didn't know he was an AQAP, he was someone who was a social figure, and therefore to many people, because you didn't, capture him and arrested him, you killed a social figure who was solving their problems and not actually a terrorist, because they didn't know that he was that. But if you rather captured him, that would have made it a change. And therefore, even when you kill, probably, or even when you target and you don't leak any information of who is this, why is this, what is the methodology, why did you do that,
you are actually highly counterproductive, especially in a place where, you know, sometimes the government does not really exist in some areas of Yemen. And therefore, this man, for example, to many people was their government. This man was a person whom, if you simply would have captured, that you would have solved a lot of problems, but in yours and the people's problems. But in the sense that you're also terrifying them, you're not making any sense to it. And regardless, this policy might look excellent, awesome in paper. It might, you know, you shoot, you don't actually see the blood in your hand, so you don't feel it. But in the ground, it's a lot of, it's a problematic in the sense. You can say it's like the McNamara policy in Vietnam, in the sense that it counts the number of the dead bodies of the other enemy without really counting the new numbers that it is actually, of enemies that it's actually making, or without thinking about it from any other scope rather than a statistical number scope.
30 seconds, but just the issue of compensation or apologies from the U.S. government for the innocents who were killed in these strikes, or any compensation. What do you know of the policy there?
I think this is the worst part about it, is not a single apology, not a single compensation, not any act, or even talking to those who lost their civilians, or even just admitting that this was done as a mistake. Unfortunately, this has been something that the U.S. has never done, and something that raged people more. And at the same time, and AQAB sometimes have paid. I am aware of some cases where AQAB have paid some compensation for harms it did, while the Yemeni government or the U.S. never did such a thing. And that is very scary when you make the very bad group do the very right thing and you don't do it, or you don't even apologize or admit it.
We have to leave it there. I want to thank you for being with us. Farea alMuslimi, Yemeni youth activist and journalist, testified at the Senate's first ever drone hearing. That does it for the show. I'll be moderating a discussion between Jeremy Scahill and Noam Chomsky at Harvard Science Center B on Saturday. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Norm.